Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with musical freaks and Mozart's most intriguing chamber work. You know, the classical music industry is a performer's industry, and it purveys entertainment. And today, of course, we're all so snotty and culturally neurotic, but we tend to forget the fact that there has always been this sort of circusy aspect of the classical music world. Things for strange instruments and odd people or disabled people who are, playing things, and we're all sort of amazed at it and whatnot. And they run around and they get displayed like, little like circus freaks, basically. I mean, that's what it is. That's part of the entertainment industry. And the classical music world, which is, of course, supposed to be far too important for that and great and whatnot, tries to distance itself. But even today, the emphasis on the very young players, young conductors, for example, children who do all this music stuff. I mean, it's out there. It's really out there. The fascination with prodigies, we hear it all the time. But back in the day, exploiting your children for fun and profit was a much more acceptable thing to do. Mozart, for example, and his sister, Nannerl, actually both of them were trotted around Europe, and to the astonishment of all. And they made a pretty good living doing it, too, until they got too old and nobody cared anymore about them, which is really kind of sad. But Mozart had a particular feeling, having been a circus act himself. He probably had a particularly warm spot in his heart for people who were undergoing similar tribulations. And none underwent more, I think, probably, at least most likely, than the glass harmonica player Marian Kirchgassner, who was blind in addition to playing the glass harmonica. And Mozart wrote one of his most fascinating and some would say beautiful and spiritual and transcendental chamber works just 7 months before he died. His Adagio and Rondo in C minor for glass harmonica, flute, oboe, viola, and cello. It's a quintet, and it's an astonishing piece of music, really a magnificent work that's very carefully planned for the ensemble that Mozart designated. And just to indicate how special Mozart was, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. The glass harmonica, let's talk about the instrument. What is the glass harmonica? Well, I'm sure I am not the only person who at a bar mitzvah or wedding or something, wet your finger and rubbed it around the rim of your wine glass and made it hum. Well, that's a glass harmonica. You have a bunch of spinning glasses filled with different levels of water, and you moisten your fingertips and you play the thing, believe it or not. And Mozart played it. Mozart knew how to play it. Apparently, it was a gimmick or a toy instrument that had some popularity in Mozart's day. It was originally perfected, if not invented, by Benjamin Franklin, no less, and then by what's his name, Mesmer, as mesmerism. That guy, he worked on it too. And this blind female glass harmonicist, Marian Kirchgassner, went zipping around Europe playing this sucker. And it's really impossible to exaggerate just how difficult that must have been back in the day. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, traveling by coach, horse-drawn carriage all over Europe with this contraption, and you're blind, and booking gigs basically in most of the royal courts of Europe, where you would astonish people with. There was quite a repertoire written for this instrument, and some of it can be heard on this delicious little Vox CD. It's quite charming. I mean, a couple of people have recorded the Mozart. It's Jean-Pierre Rampal did it. That's here on this Sony thing. But the most popular, if you might say it, disc is this one. They're all played by the same guy, Bruno Hoffmann, who was the major 20th century glass harmonicist. And he's got a program of music for the glass harmonica by composers well-known and less well-known, led off by the Mozart, of course. Now, Mozart wrote his Adagio and Rondo in C minor, Kochel 617, for glass harmonica, flute, oboe, viola, and cello, and also a separate little Adagio in C major for the glass harmonica alone. Really, this quintet is an extraordinary work. It's 15 minutes long. It's a big piece, and it's very carefully planned. And if you compare Mozart's ensemble to what the other folks who were writing for the instrument did, you'll see what the difference is, because we also get Johann Friedrich Reichardt, who was a very well-known composer of the day, his Rondo in B flat for glass harmonica, string quartet, and double bass, just a plain string ensemble with the glass harmonica. And then Carl Leopold Rühlig, his quintet for glass harmonica and string quartet, again, just your average string ensemble. Johann Abraham Peter Schultz, he's Largo for glass harmonica alone, and then Johann Gottlieb Naumann, who wrote 12 sonatas for glass harmonica. Could you believe that? And he wrote a quartet in C major for glass harmonica, flute, viola, and cello, which is similar to Mozart's, a little bit similar to Mozart. But Mozart clearly designed his ensemble to offset the special dulcet tones of the glass harmonica. I mean, think about it. I mean, a flute, an oboe, a viola, and a cello. And the glass harmonica itself, which can sound either incredibly ethereal or like fingers scraping down a blackboard, depending on your level of tolerance. So let's listen to a bit of this. It's on the Vox label. I really do hope Naxos reissues this thing. That would be just marvelous. But it's with Bruno Hoffmann and friends doing, we're going to listen to a bit of the Rondo from the Adagio and Rondo, the opening Rondo Ritornello, which introduces the whole ensemble, as well as the solo instrument of choice. Really quite an extraordinary device. Here it is. Isn't that different? I mean, how often do you want to listen to that? I mean, it's that sort of, I don't know, it has that very strange tone. You can imagine it would have fascinated people back in Mozart's day, as it could fascinate people today as well. But it is an extraordinarily beautiful piece. In modern performances without glass harmonica, it's arranged for other things. You could play it on like a celesta or something like that if you wanted to, I suppose. But really, really a lovely piece and a wonderful example of serious composition, a really serious composition for an instrument which is, hopelessly peculiar, to put it that way, but also for an aspect of the classical music industry, the dirty underside, the armpit of the classical music universe. That is the exploitation of young and freakish and strange and handicapped, and all these people had to make a living. And learning to play a bizarre instrument was really a good way to do it, especially if you were female and handicapped. It checks all the boxes of political correctness back in the day. You had to play an instrument that men didn't play. You had to play an instrument that people who could see didn't play. Really kind of amazing. And they found these things. And there was serious work put into perfecting their mechanism and making them something that would be musically satisfying. And Mozart is the only composer, of course, naturally, who wrote a work for this peculiar instrument that has since come down to us as a masterpiece. But you can hear a selection of them here. And on this music for glass harmonica. There it is with Bruno Hoffmann. And give it a shot yourself and see what you think. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.